All right, I think we are going to go ahead, in the essence of using all of our precious minutes tonight, go ahead and get started with our work session, which, hang on here, I meant to pull it up electronically. Please hold. I can't. I'm not going to sing for you. And it's not coming up. There. Oh, Ross is going to sing. Al, roll call.
Benson.
Here.
Brunig. Here. Johnson.
Here.
Maibaum.
Present.
Minor.
Here.
Schramm.
Here.
Weber.
Here.
Villanueva.
Present.
Mayor Moser.
Here.
City Manager Leon. City Attorney Denherter.
Here.
All right, now is the time and the place in our work session. If there's somebody here to address the City Commission on something not on the work session agenda tonight. Seeing no movement, then I will go ahead and turn it over to City Manager Leon.
Thank you. This evening, Al and Wayne.
I don't think that's on. Amy.
Mic check. There we go. This evening, Al and Dwayne will be helping me out with questions and with the technicalities of the presentation. And hopefully you'll interrupt me and ask questions as we go along. So when we met in earlier this month at the Capital Improvements Budget meeting, we talked a little bit about a funding proposal for the Huether Family Aquatics Center. And as we discussed that, at the end of the evening, you all indicated, yeah, we're interested in hearing more about this and understanding it more. It gets complicated very quickly, and I'm sure you all spent the weekend reading all the bond documents that Colleen and Al provided for you, and you know them front to back. And we didn't include those to confuse you, rather we included them so that you can see for yourself and reference some of the things for yourself that we're talking about. I'm going to go through the memo sort of as an outline and talk through some questions that you might have. I don't want you to get too committed to the actual numbers, because the numbers are only good as the day we hit print. So these are in general or approximately what the numbers are, but we have some things that are coming up with the Aquatic Center that we know are coming up that are not accounted for. For example, if you've been there this summer, you've seen that middle grass area in the Aquatic Center didn't really take off, sort of between the adventure pool and the family pool. So we're determining, do we, replant grass there? Should that be a concrete area? What does that need to look like to best perform? We also lost a tree there. One of the trees didn't make it, so that was replanted. So that's a small example, not a big financial impact, but that might make a difference in the numbers. These numbers aren't exact, is what I'm saying. So we're not totally through closing out the project. One thing on the horizon is that, according to what we understand from the bond documents, is that we need to accept the project no later than, I think, September 26th or September 25th. I can't remember the exact date, but it actually lands on your September meeting. So any other things that we're going to do or need or buy or purchase that we haven't, we're going to need to get that completed here this summer. So Adam and Todd are working with Stockwell and working with the contractor to get things, some loose ends tied up yet. So just want everyone to understand that that's another sort of timeline out on the horizon. So it would be nice to get a direction as to where we're going with the funding before we're actually ending up closing the project. So you asked for more information, and we're going to give it to you, and it's going to get complicated quickly and tough to understand, and so we're going to do our best to keep it as clear as we can, but I hope you'll stop me and say this doesn't make sense or I don't understand. So I just started out the memo by sort of framing the three things that we want to do. And then I went a little bit into the explanation. So the first thing that we want to do is utilize the balance in the construction fund account. So in the Huther Family Aquatic Center construction fund account to meet the annual debt service shortfall. So we talked about the fact that what the opt-out ends up being and what our debt service is not equal. And so we think it makes sense that we make those things equal. Because right now, we're using general fund, I believe, to create that gap, to fill in that gap, to pay for that gap. And so general fund is what pays for, all the other stuff that's covered in city services, parks, streets, so that's okay to do that, but it just, to us makes sense that we would do that. Second step would be pay down the balance of the loan that we took to make the annual debt service equal to the amount of the opt-out or levy. So, we can't do any early payment until 2025. So that's why we have that date in there. That makes sense to us as well to move forward with that. And then the final step is kind of the step that I talked about to try to make this as simple to understand as possible, transferring the remaining balance in that construction fund account to an aquatics operation and maintenance account. And so that's where kind of the why comes in, and I think it's important for people to understand the why. We're not trying to do something, confusing with the money or anything like that, but we have an opportunity, and we knew we were going to have this opportunity almost as soon as the bids came in, barring any huge change orders, which we had a couple maybe, but we didn't have big change orders. So our great bids, our strong bid that came in, we knew we were going to have this possibility, and throughout the years of construction, Ross and Al and I had been discussing what could we legally do, perhaps to present to the commission to consider some type of ongoing fund that we can help put commissions and staff in good position to take care of the facility. So we've had, I guess, in my tenure here with the city, we've been really lucky to have some pretty successful economic years. That hasn't always been the case in the city's history. And I tend to be a little more conservative than many, but partly that's because Charlie helped train me. But partly it's just because I need to be really careful with, what I recommend about spending the public's dollars. I'm a little nervous going forward. What's the economy look like in our country and then in our state and in our community going forward? I don't know, but I would hate to be put in a situation where we have this beautiful facility and we get 10 years down the road and something needs to be replaced or something needs to be, addressed, or maybe we're in a really tight year and we're looking at where do we need to cut back on general fund services. Well, the thing that, if things got that way, and the sky certainly isn't falling, but the sky could drop a bit, would be amenities. And so this would be definitely an area where we'd look at, hey, if things got really bad. Typically, we don't have the capability to do something like this, to take care in the future of it for a facility, unless you were to change something, for example, in your ordinances. That in your ordinance that guides the 506, part of that can help fund the SAC. Even then, we've gotten to the point where we're all talking about, wow, how much should we be supplementing the ad operation with dollars that can go towards infrastructure, et cetera. So that's kind of the why. And as you can imagine, we have things that come up all the time. So an example of this, might be the library roof. We need to address the roof at the library. We knew we needed to address the roof at the library, but we thought that would maybe be a 23, 24 type situation. Well, in our budget preparation and having Greg Homestead go up and take a look at the roof, he said, no, it needs to happen now. We need to start that now. And so that's moved up, unplanned, unbudgeted. If in the future we get to a point where we need an improvement in the pool before we open, it's going to be pretty hard to say, well, we're going to put that in the 5-year plan. If we have the opportunity not to do that and to alleviate a future staff discussion and commission discussion about how do we make this work, I think that it makes good sense to do that. So that's kind of a little bit of the why. And, who knows? I hope we're never in a situation where we're wondering about how do we operate. But boy, when I start hearing from Dwayne and Al and others about what our chemical costs are, what our fuel costs are, what our natural gas costs are, that is a little bit alarming to me. Now, maybe some of those things will go down, but I think that it's something that we should be cognizant of. So those are just a couple, of things that I wanted to bring forward. The other thing I wanted to talk about is the dollars that were allocated, or I guess earmarked or discussed that were not part of the opt-out. So 2 different sections there. One would be Dive and Yankton and their efforts to fundraise and to put money towards the aquatic center. Lots of public dollars there, businesses, private dollars. Many of those are contributions that are given over a 5-year period of time, 10 years in some instances. And we have done a good job of recouping those dollars. We won't get 100% of those dollars. That's not typically how that works. We'll do everything we can, but, are we going to chase someone down if they move, or, we also think that it's possible that somebody's economic situation changes, and if somebody pledged $500 over 5 years, which we've had, we're not going to, we're going to be understanding of that. So we told the public that those monies were going to be utilized towards construction, and they were. We matched, we meaning the commission at that time, sort of indicated a match to Dive and Yankton of up to $2 million. I don't remember, and I didn't go back and watch the meeting, if we called it match of the dollars raised or if it was sort of the city's contribution towards the capital of the project. But it made sense at the time in talking with Dive and Yankton that the public saw, look, there's public monies, there's private monies, and then we need more help from the community. And that's kind of where that funding strategy came from to beginning. So in the construction account, that's where all those dollars, I guess, reside. And so I kind of thought about how to explain this over the weekend. If everyone gives me $1 bill, well, listen, if everyone gives me a $100 bill, we can try this. And then I, put them together and I start spending them. I'm not exactly sure which dollar came from Tony and which dollar came from Mike, and, which dollar came from Ross, although Ross would probably do a little mustache on his or something. But so the money is there. So to say which dollars were spent, I had that question. That's why I'm giving that explanation. That's kind of difficult to say. I mean, we spent dollars before we had the opt-out. Our friends at Stockwell, they need to eat and pay their employees and all that stuff. So we had some dollars spent on, design and things like that. And so that's part of that, what can be charged to the construction fund. So that's kind of the background. And I wanted to talk a little bit more too about the details of that, but I thought this would be a good place to pause and get sort of initial questions or reaction.
I definitely appreciate not wanting to confuse us anymore than necessary, but I will say I was hoping for some more clarity on what was essentially, projected to the community a couple years ago on these monies, and I don't have that yet. So, whether it's watching the previous meetings to understand exactly what was said, that was, I guess, in part my hope, so that we had some more clarity about what was actually, communicated to the community. And that's not in this document, and it's definitely not in, 50 pages of this bond document here either.
And
But it does seem like a pretty straightforward thing to have in hand before we'd make any big decision on
And I can
this.
certainly go back and watch. What I recall is that Dive and Yankton came to the commission meeting, or to a commission meeting, and said, look, we will match what you put in. And in working with Dive In, I suggested to the commission that we do $2 million out of the 506. I don't recall if I said match or not, but the intention was that it was, those dollars would, both the publicly fundraised dollars and whatever was allocated from the 506 would go to the construction of the aquatic center.
Well, and I know too, we have an individual here on our city commission who was part of the Dive In Yankton effort and did a phenomenal job, and maybe has some insight into what his and others' impression was as far as the contribution from the city goes.
Well, what I would ask, I guess, question, or just have a question about is that, and I would have to go back and look as well, but just to make sure, I was under the impression potentially that any money saved would be to potentially sunset the opt-out quicker.
And it still could be. So one of the things about the opt-out, and here's where we start layering, is, the opt-out's going to change. The burden of the opt-out's going to change. Hopefully, as we grow, the opt-out becomes less and less. Hopefully, nothing bad happens in the next few years with the economy, but we also have to think about, as we grow, which is probably the likely scenario, the burden of the opt-out becomes less on each individual and each property. But if we had a major employer or a major manufacturer that ceased to be able to operate here, that could change the opt-out another way as well. And so that, as my understanding, always exists to pay back early, if the commission wants to, but that can occur until 2025. So that is, as I understand it, and Al, you can confirm, an option if the commission should so choose. Is that correct, Al?
Yes, and again, you can pay before 2025, but then you're going to pay a penalty to boot.
Penalties. Okay.
So,
I'm sorry.
yeah, so the reason that we'd suggest at least waiting to 225 is so that you don't pay a penalty also.
Right.
Why penalize yourself, so to speak?
And I will say too that I do think it's important that we build this wonderful facility and that we do have funds to continue to operate it. I do hope that as people come to our city, that they use the facility and that our costs at least match what we're bringing in. And I know we were short by, was it 40,000 somewhere in there last year? Do you remember?
I think it was 60 is where it ended up.
60? Okay, but that,
Right.
if I remember, that didn't include pre-sales for passes the year before, if I remember correctly. I had 40 something in my head. I could be wrong.
Todd Larson is nodding his head that,
Okay,
so that's always the goal. As we move ahead, I'm hoping that that's what occurs. Boy, with the costs of things today, I don't know that will occur this year. Also, last year, we had that cool opening weekend, and then it was hot, and it was hot all summer. We had kind of a slower start here this year already, and I think we're picking up now that we've had some hotter days, but I don't think we're going to get concessions for sure where we were. We'd have to make some really big strides there. So part will be operational days, and we've had some bad weather days too where we have limited hours because of thunderstorms, et cetera. So that's always the goal. I think we probably won't always get there, and we'll have to think about, how much are we willing to just like we do with other facilities. How much are we willing to, I guess, supplement from to make the operation whole?
Right, and that is, my point is that that's always the goal. However, we also sold this as a quality of life project as well. And so we may not fully fund it all the time, and I think that that's okay. I think it's money well spent. But I do agree that it does make sense to put some money in a fund to help to continue to operate in a fashion where people are going to want to show up. They're going to want to come, that no one wants to come to a facility that has a bunch of problems or that things aren't working correctly. So we do have to maintain our facility as well. The only thing I would say is, do we put all 2 million into that fund, or do we pay some of that more of that balance down in the 2025 so we're not penalized for it, because that doesn't make any sense.
Well, we have contacted Water Technologies and we asked them, would you be willing to do a capital improvement plan for us? So we have kind of an idea of costs, and they're willing to do that. They couldn't do that in advance of this meeting, in time for this meeting, but we will have a better idea of what some of the things are that they know have a estimated lifespan or a replacement span. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean we're just going to replace something because it's up on the capital improvement plan, but we'll know then, like, okay, year 7 or 8, we need to start looking at a pump, or year 12 or 15, we need to start looking at a slide, and we'll know what today's dollars are. Couple million doesn't go very far if you have to replace a $500,000 slide, or, and I'm not saying that's what the cost was, I'm just, so that's all up to the commission. But yeah, that's definitely that's a situation to think about too, is the amounts. And, the bond documents can only be utilized for certain things. So that's in your memo too, that they're limited to the project, the issuance of the bonds, and to prepay the lease. So that makes a difference too. I think last time somebody talked about, what is the flexibility of those dollars?
I think we got really lucky with the initial bids on the project where they came in. So that's what allowed this conversation to happen. So in that sense, I think we're very lucky to be here discussing that today. So then, I think back in the day, we were discussing this will allow us to pay it off earlier. But, now sitting here and evaluating some of the other experiences we're having, trying to keep properties up, whether it's the Summit Activity Center or some of the other things in our care, this makes sense to me. And I don't think that people who committed funds to build the project would have an issue with us setting this aside to say this is for maintenance and it's only going to be used for that purpose. We're lucky to be in that position, and I think it will serve us well in the future as we deal with issues at the Aquatic Center.
We would, if we were moving forward, we would ask the commission probably to act on a resolution so that the public does have an opportunity. We had some people who gave some very generous gifts, and I never want to seem, that I never want to take advantage of people's generosity, and so that would provide them the opportunity to come to a meeting and talk to you about if they feel this is not the right thing. This is something that could have been done, and I had this conversation with somebody today too, administratively, but I felt better that, we should talk about this, even though it's kind of a big soup, so that everyone's kind of clear, or at least everyone knows what I'm attempting to explain and do. I don't think we've been in this position before, so it's kind of a new to us in terms of the facility. But I think that, the resolution would talk about capital improvements, maintenance, and operation. It's a more expensive facility to run, and we knew it would be, but we didn't know, because of what's happened in the world since the opt-out passed, how much more expensive it was going to be. So Water Technologies was really good to us about being realistic about operational costs, but if things stay as they are, those are going to be much higher than we anticipated to. It's a heated pool. Our previous pool wasn't heated. It's a much bigger body of water. It's got a lot more features. Lifeguards are at a premium. That makes a difference. So, the other goal I have is let's operate that facility as much as we can, as often as we can, and that takes money.
So I like where the conversation is going. I like that we're looking at this and we're trying to plan for the future. But I do think it needs to come to a bigger public discussion, because there's going to be opportunities for future opt-outs. And I don't want to shoot ourselves in the foot by burning bridges when people thought that's what we were allocating the money towards. So I think as long as we just can get some more public input to feel better about whatever decision we make.
So tonight I'm just looking for, is this the right direction? If it is, what we'll do is have a resolution for you guys to act on, and that will be a great time to get input from the public, and hear what those questions or concerns are. And by that time, I would expect that we would have some information from Water Technologies about, okay, here's what we're kind of looking at 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road, for possible things that we need to start replacing. I really don't want to be in the situation that we ended up, with our other pool where, we're just patching things together. We want to make sure that if something needs to be replaced, we can replace it. And in our capital improvement budget, if we have something that's $100,000, you guys know how hard that is to find. That's taking away from something else that we're doing in order to do that. So, and between those times, I can rewatch all those meetings and send you all those links so that you know what exactly was said and what was committed.
I would just jump in and echo what Commissioner Benson has indicated and sort of the direction we're heading. I think one of the things as a community that Yankton did well in developing the aquatics facility was created a conversation and had so many opportunities. If you remember gathering in the middle school library and talking and prioritizing slides and lazy river and all those things, and I don't think the conversation has to end now that it's built. In fact, I would be really comfortable continuing that dialogue and letting the community provide us guidance.
I would agree with that statement, and that also this may be a way for us to test the waters on what a perpetual maintenance fund type situation looks like for upcoming bigger expenses, like say a bridge that we have to deal with. And so it's because we don't have one of those accounts really that I'm aware of in the same fashion.
The only thing that's a little similar is the cemetery perpetual care maintenance fund.
Right.
Which fortunately we haven't had to dig into, excuse the pun, but we haven't had to utilize that. And I think this will be a different scenario because I don't know if I told the story about my parents' refrigerator, but my parents' refrigerator that they won at a home show in 1972 is still in the garage operating fine. The one in the house has been replaced 4 or 5 or 6 times. And, a cemetery, there's very limited capital there. It's land and pieces of equipment and personnel that comes out of the general fund, but there's very little things that can go wrong. The aquatic center, anytime, I learned early on from my first public works director, anything that has water in it is a maintenance strain on the budget. So that's all the aquatic center is. And so they tend to be expensive facilities, and we have a harsh climate, and we just know that doesn't matter how good the construction is or the, engineering, we know that things just aren't made like they once were, and things aren't, I don't think that's going to last 70 years. If it were, we could all just say, we don't have to worry about that, because very few of us will be swimming in 70 years. But I just don't think that's the reality, so I'm trying to look ahead to make your job in the future easier, and but it is not, they are public dollars. We certainly could use more money in the 506 to do more infrastructure type things. But then I go back to what you were talking about, Commissioner Maibaum, is what did we say? Because I also feel like if we say we're going to do something, that's what we ought to do. That's how we should move forward. Otherwise, next time we say something, everyone's going to go, well, they say this, but then if there's that's not what's going to happen. So I think that's important too.
Yeah, that actually was what I was going to reiterate, is we voted as a commission to put $2 million to the pool to make that project happen. And so to me, we have to honor that. How we honor that maybe could be up for debate, but what in my book is not up for debate is that money goes anywhere else but to the pool one way or the other. That was our commitment, and as I think Commissioner Benson said, we know we potentially might have other opt-outs we're going to have to go to the community with in the future. And if we're not good stewards of the money and doing what we said we were going to do, then I think that makes it difficult. So when you're talking about making things difficult for our predecessors and people that'll be sitting in these chairs some year, whether it's us, depending on what we need later on, or down the road, people have long memories too. So I would say, to me, it's not whether we spend that $2 million on the pool, it's how you spend it.
And I want to ask Al and Dwayne Johnson if they have anything to add to the conversation, because I really went through a lot of different versions of this memo on how I was trying to explain it and trying to make it make sense to you and to the public. And they helped me switch some things around, and their minds operate a lot more technically and differently than mine. So I just didn't know if either of you had something you wanted to add that you thought was important for them to know. Looks like Dwayne's going for his
Don't all
mic.
turn your mics on at once.
Dwayne's going for his mic.
Oh, okay.
Just when you guys were talking about what was proposed as far as the financing, and I put the graphic up, and that was fairly early on, and I can put it back up again too if you want to see it again, but that basically outlined what the sources of funds were and what the uses were. And this goes all the way back to when we were talking about doing the sidewalks. So it was, estimated cost was just short of 17 million, 2 million from the second penny / general fund, 2 million in donations, 95,000 from active transportation, 170,000 in kind with second penny with city crews doing the sidewalk or parking lot, 450,000 from the Triple B, and then 12.6 million in bond proceeds. So that kind of gives you a rough idea for just $17.3 million project.
And I did, for everyone's benefit too, thus far, to date, the total project costs $12,997,729.61. So that's barring anything that we end up changing or doing differently there. So if we do something different in that median area, there'll be some difference there. And we've got a Whibbit. We got a sick Whibbit we need to find a solution for, and we're working on that too. That's not a lot of money, but.
I do want to make my position clear to you, maybe if I didn't make that earlier. I agree, whatever money this $2 million needs to be spent on the pool, that is what we told the public, and we need to do what we say. And So if this, I don't think this should go back in the general fund. I think that has to be spent on the aquatic center, Heather Aquatic Center for sure.
I'd be in favor of the city continuing with this resolution, and I'd like to hear public input on it going forward at another meeting. But I think as far as a discussion point for the public, this would be a good way to start. And then if the discussion is totally different, then maybe we change course. We don't have to agree on the resolution next time around, but at least we have a place to start.
Yeah, and I don't think it will be for your next meeting. It will be before September 26th. But as you guys know, we need to get the budget here wrapped up, but we'll see what we have time to do. It might be nice to have that done before the budget, but we'll just see kind of what time allows us to do as well. But yeah, I think that the resolution also then kind of puts it in, you know, if you give us direction, there isn't anything really written down. I mean, you can go back and watch the videos, of course, but I think it's good to have those types of things documented. So I don't have anything else, Mayor, unless there's something in the memo that people want to talk about in more detail, we sure can.
I guess I would ask my fellow commissioners, one, if there's anything else about the Heather Family Aquatic Center, what we're talking about tonight. Otherwise, I did ask City Manager Leon just to be prepared, since you all had a couple of weeks to go through the CIP after she presented it the first time, and I know we had a couple commissioners absent, so prepared her and asked her to be prepared to answer any questions you may have as it related to the CIP, since this was also an issue. So folks did know we were talking about CIP expenses tonight.
I do know, since we've met, before I start seeing mic lights go on, that we've been surprised at some of the things we're finding in our budget, mostly utilities and natural gas and fuel costs. And so Dwayne has talked about that there might be some capital that we need to push if we can. So tomorrow I'm going to tell the department heads, hey, if you have something that you don't really need, or that you're thinking it's probably could wait till 2024, let's talk about pushing it, because we want to make sure we can operate as well. So we'll talk about those things with the department heads. So we might see a little less capital, but if there's a project that's really important that the commission really wants to see is prioritized, then that's something we definitely want to know. I did send you an email this week that I've heard more from folks, pickleball folks. They're really enthusiastic about that project, and I got another one today, so I'm just passing it along that there's a lot of enthusiasm for that project with which they plan to be a partner. So if you have any other comments on the CIP, I am as ready as I can be.
So you mentioned the library roof. Is that going to be in 23, or are we talking 24?
Probably split 22, 23. Greg has said we got to get going right away, so hopefully we can get some of the stuff done as soon as we can get, information on what it's going to cost and what all needs to be done, and I'm guessing that's something we'll have to bid out unless we can call it an emergency repair, so we'll have to talk about that. But yeah, that's going to be a right away, and we didn't know right away, so that's going to come into this year's capital, which will impact the following year. The next work session that you have scheduled is the 25th of July. Dwayne and I talked today about perhaps doing triple B that night. That always seems to be something that warrants a large discussion, even though it's, just one aspect of the budget, but that would also allow people to come in, and I'm not suggesting that everyone comes in and gives a talk or anything, but if somebody wants to come in and listen to it, there's a space where they're not having to sit through an entire other rendition on something, and they can just come in and hear about the triple B and comment on that. that'll be a robust discussion as well.
Amy, walk us through again, what is the timeline of the budget and the timing of all of the different pieces and parts of it? I don't need exact dates, but just kind of in overall, as we're coming at this, you're talking about Triple B now, I just kind of, again, for myself and others, how that all fits together.
Al says the timeline is 10 months of cooperation and 2 months of budget. Yeah. So the next real step is that I have to submit the entire budget to the commission no later than August 1. So typically around the last week of July, the 28th or 29th, we get everything finalized and then we submit it to you. Then my suggestion to the commission would be that that first commission meeting in August, which is the 8th, we do the same thing we did with the capital improvement plan, and we start early, work until 7 o'clock, have your regular business meeting, and then decide if you want to keep going or meet the next night. And then from there, we let it rest, I guess, a little bit for feedback and comment. And then we make any tweaks or adjustments that we hear about that are necessary. And then we come back to you with a budget ordinance, and you have 2 readings on that. So it's usually approximately the end of September before it gets all wrapped up. But that's the timeline we're working on. I haven't in the past done the Triple B on a work session, but we thought it was something that we might try a little bit. I think sometimes when the budget meetings were just these long, lengthy CIP and then the long, lengthy operating, we kind of rushed through everything and then spent a lot of time on the Triple B, and that's okay. Of course, you can do that. I just think it makes a little bit of sense to give everything a little bit of time, and it's so much that it's hard to, when you have another business meeting too, it's kind of hard to have the full discussion. So I thought we'd try that, but I'm working for you guys, so if you don't think that's a good idea, you let me know.
So one thing that I would just point out is when it comes to our work sessions, I think there has been some confusion in the community. And I can give an example, like when we were talking about the Fox Run lease and Great Life, we had a work session as a city commission where we actually had input, public came, and there were members of Fox Run who came and talked to us, I suppose. And then we've had other work sessions where this is just for the commission to discuss. And so even with the Triple B, whether it's, entities who are directly affected by the Triple B, I'm just curious if we need to provide a little bit more clarification on what our expectation is for the public when we have meetings like this. If anybody from the public can actually come and provide us their 2 cents during our general work session.
So I think that's up to you guys. Legally, what we feel we're obliged to do is let anyone who has something not on the agenda, anytime you guys get together, to come and meet. So that's, the one thing that we're always going to do per Ross's guidance, that, somebody gets a chance anytime you guys are in a collective body. Sometimes there's so much material to go over, as you know, there isn't even time for you guys to discuss it properly. Sometimes topics we've invited people to come in to share if they're an expert on the area, or it's to do with a certain community entity. I don't know that we invited the public on Fox Run. Careful how quickly you say that. But I think we did invite the advisory board, because, they had a sort of more of a knowledge, but I'd have to go back again, and my memory isn't that sharp anymore. So Ross, you can maybe say if you recommend a hard stop rule for the commission, but I understand how it can be confusing for the public, and at the same time, I want to give you guys the flexibility if you want to ask questions at some point, or if you have enough to discuss between you and amongst you that you don't.
My 2 cents on it for what it's worth. First of all, it's a meeting. So if you guys want to take public input at one of those, you can. However, in those work sessions, they were designed originally to educate the commission and allow the commission to really delve into an issue, because you guys just need more time to really tackle a subject by subject, whatever it may be. And the notion is the public is always afforded an opportunity to speak to a decision you guys make, but those work sessions are not designed to be the time that the commission takes any action. So in order to maximize the educational opportunity for this board, and to give you guys the maximum amount of time to discuss, that was viewed as a work session for the commission, but viewable by the public because it is a meeting. But since no business was being taken, usually the public wasn't going to speak during those. But you guys, it's your meetings. If you want to allow public input, you can. I think it works better if you're going to do that, to announce that you're going to, and it can be done on a topic by topic basis. If you want an opportunity for the public to come in for an hour and just tell you what their thoughts are, that's fine. We just need to plan ahead that that's what we're going to do at that particular time, so that we allow for that in the planning or structuring of that meeting, because there's usually so much ground to cover. It's rare that we have extra dead time before we roll into the regular session. So that was kind of the framework that we put together for these work sessions, but that doesn't mean you guys as a collective group are bound to that. And I think sometimes it may make sense to dedicate a work session as a public listening session, but then, advertise that way so that the public knows that's going to be a public opportunity for input. So my 2 cents.
Basically, and I get that, because what we don't want to do is to have a work session and run out of time to get through everything we want to discuss, because we get derailed after one statement or one part of that conversation. Does it make things clear as mud, as I like to say, if we basically, as we talk to the public, or if we're asked to say that if time allows, we would allow public input, but that is like not a guarantee? I mean, I'm looking at tonight and it's already 10 to 7 and we had one issue.
It's up to this commission. It's up to the commission. I just think that to invite that every time might make for more frustration. I know that in the last work session, there was an individual who wanted to get up and talk and was denied an opportunity and was upset about that. So I worry about setting up that opportunity with some degree of frequency where people think they're going to come in and talk and they're denied an opportunity because they simply ran out of time. So I think you need to be deliberate. My recommendation would be that you be deliberate. If you're going to accept input, reserve time for it, and organize it accordingly.
Or just say that work sessions are not time for public input.
Yeah, I mean, if we do the triple B next time, which I'm hearing, I saw a couple heads go this way, there's a lot of ground to cover, and you guys like to talk a lot about it. Some people just want to hear and be present, I think, for you, and they do have an opportunity to talk about the budget at future meetings, so that might be a hard one. If you ask everyone to talk, you could have, you can talk about the merits of one of those agencies or the facade program, we'll say, for an hour, and that would not get a lot of work done, but.
So I would say at this point, just because I feel like we have to give direction, is the commission okay with saying at this point that public comment will not be taken at the work session?
I think I remember as these were beginning, these study session work sessions, and that was the intent, was to get us all on the same page and understanding the nuances of topics. I think that seems like the place to stay, but I do like the idea of reserving the right to say, hey, we're going to have a work session. We need to talk about what to do with this money related to the aquatics facility. We're going to have a work session that is open to the public, I think, unless specifically announced.
Yeah, all of them are open to the public, and if that's your position, we need to be clear that we're giving people the time to make an appearance still. on something that the commission is not going to talk about, so they can take it up later. But that's just in accordance with the open meeting law, so that everyone knows they have an opportunity whenever the commission comes together on any topic that's not on the agenda. But on the work topic, then we can tell folks, unless invited for their expertise or something like that.
I agree. The meetings are open, and I think the thing for the public is to understand we may talk a lot during work sessions, but there never will be action taken. So anytime anything comes up in a work session, they'll have the opportunity, because it's going to have to, if action needs to be taken, it will be put on a city agenda, and there will, during a regular city commission meeting, be given plenty of time to address the commission at that point. So I don't want people to feel like their voice is not important and we don't want to hear it. And so again, some of it's just educating the public that work sessions are that, and that no action will be taken. And if that item ends up being an actionable item, that there will be time during the regular meeting for them to address the commission.
And just for clarification, we'll follow that for this direction that I feel like I've gotten from you all this evening, is to go back and watch the meetings and get specifics on what was committed in regards to funding the aquatic center, which I will do. Prepare a resolution with what staff has in mind for the funding of the aquatic center construction operation maintenance fund, and then make sure that folks know that that is on the public meeting agenda, and that the commission would take input here at the public, in the public forum, or as individuals as you talk to constituents.
Right, and I would say to the public too, as we're all very well aware of, as our email and our cell phones and conversations happen in grocery stores, and us out getting supplies for house improvement projects or something like that. Folks are really good about contacting their commissioners outside the meeting, and I would still encourage them to do that if they have thoughts that they want to be considered. So, all right, anything else for City Manager Leon as tied to the Youth and Family Aquatic Center? My thanks to you, Amy and Dwayne and Al and Ross and anybody else who provided input to bring this in front of the City Commission tonight. So with that, I would ask for, we have no other business on the work session agenda. So for that, I would ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Anybody abstaining? All right, work session is concluded, and we will start with our regular City Commission meeting promptly at 7.